on this misty day to the meeting of the San Francisco Shelter Monitoring Committee. My name is Zay Alo. I know that we have new members who are joining us today, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Our work is imperative at operations level rather than policy and macro level. We get into the granular details of how operational standards actually impact guests, not necessarily whether the intentions of our policy directives are at certain outcomes, but what actually happens when people are in the system. So our focus is specific to standards of care. That being said, I wonder if we can have a roll call.
Okay, we have our chairs here as evidenced by his microphone working. Member Dobbs, I don't see you. I'm going to put you as absent. Member Street. Member Barr. Test your microphone. This is a good time to
Testing. 1, 2. Yeah.
All right. Member Creech.
Present.
Member Langford.
Present.
Member Clark. Member Clark has the right to attend remote. Let me just make sure not in here somewhere. Yeah, I'm not seeing you, Stephen, so I'm going to mark you as not here for the moment. Member Tasby.
Present.
Member Musao. I always look to I always have to watch those umlauts when I say your name. And Member Bodkin. All right. And so neither of you having a microphone, if you want to say something, just wave to me and I'll turn my microphone over. This can easily be switched around. Right. So we have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Unusual.
That being said, can we also in the records for the purposes of, since we have to mark whenever someone takes a virtual exemption, we have to track that. So can we, if Member Clark attends virtually, can we just make a minute in the actual meeting minutes that they attended virtually and also how many times virtually they've attended this year? Because there are rules to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
He has a foundation.
Okay, we should still mark it just for the sake of, let's mark it. And then when he attends, before offering any comments, we have to also check whether there's anyone in the room with him. We have to ask that question if he's attending virtually. Okay. All right. That being said, now that we are at call to order, let us begin with our land acknowledgement, which is item A in your packet. And if anyone, hello to everyone in the gallery. I so appreciate you being here. I like to always acknowledge our community. That's why we're doing this work. If you don't have a packet, I believe the packets should be available up front. If you don't have an agenda packet, just so you can follow along. The land acknowledgement is item A. The Shelter Monitoring Committee acknowledges we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone community and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. Moving to introducing new members, the Homelessness Oversight Commission recently approved the applications of new members for seats 2 and 7, and I am as well pleased to introduce members Bodkin and Langford. So welcome. Thank you for your service to the city. Thank you for your service.
Appreciate that.
Item C is a review of the previous minutes, review of draft minutes from previous meetings, and public comment will also be heard after any suggestions for editing made by members of the committee. So let's go to the previous minutes from the meeting on September the 17th, which should appear in your packet. Do members of the committee have any suggestions for edits from these minutes before we move to public comment? Hearing none. Hearing none. Are committee members comfortable moving to public comment? That being said, we will move into public comment regarding the previous minutes from the meeting on September the 17th. If any members who are joining us virtually or present in person at in the gallery have any comments regarding the minutes from the meeting on September the 17th, please stand or raise your virtual hand to be acknowledged so that your comments can be recognized.
And if you're on the phone, it's a *3 to raise or unraise your hand.
Tom's is here. Hi. You made it.
No teleconference hands.
We see no hands in the virtual meeting, and I see no hands. No one has approached the podium here for public comment in person. If you're like me, that may just be lack of caffeine. But if you are motivated to do so, to make public comment, please feel free now. Otherwise, we will move on to the next agenda item. We will accept these minutes rather, approve them, and then move on to the next agenda item.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Make your first motion, Isaac.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
Second. All in favor? And I'll just mention for our new members that we're technically supposed to ask you one by one and record who votes yes and no, but for routine matters, we usually just we'll go with a all in favor. And if someone wants to say no, they can do so, and I can record that, but usually that hasn't been an issue. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The committee has approved the minutes of the meeting on September the 17th, 2025. In the agenda, we will now be moving into old business, section 2, that is item A, entitled More Granularity in the Standards of Care. And for those of you who are maybe new and may not be accustomed with the alphabet soup of things, SOCs are not actually socks of any kind. They are the standards of care, which again are the purview of this committee. So more granularity in the standards of care across the shelter system. And the discussion is about sub-standards of care, or more specifically tailored standards of care, to hopefully allow us to provide more detailed summary information on what sorts of violations, meaning transgressions by providers or participants of the current standards of care, are being alleged. And we will move on to the current complaints later in this committee meeting. And it should also be noted that in the September 17th minutes, you'll note that the Office of Racial Equity, Anthony Bush, has been a part of this conversation regarding the sub-granularity of the standards of care. That being said, do members of the committee have any specific comment about more detailed granularity about the standards of care that they wish to make a note of now?
Chair, let me see if I can find the draft
Mhm.
of the breakdown that I could have sworn I had in here in the agenda.
Of the current standards?
No, of the substandards, if you want to call them that. So we broke
More
down,
detailed standards,
Well-
not substandard.
yeah, more detailed standards.
Yes.
So they're like standard 1A,
Yes.
B, C.
Okay.
So I'm not seeing it in the subcommittee. I thought we had talked about this in subcommittee agenda, subcommittee minutes agenda.
Will that be a part of the subcommittee report?
Well, if member Street, who wasn't here, wants to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can do it from memory, but I'm not finding the document. My
You
apologies.
want me to send it to you? I think I have it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to post it here. If you were to post it, well, that might be challenging. If you were to just tell us, maybe you can comment on the actual A, B, C, D
Okay.
from that November draft.
Yeah, I see it.
So we started
Hello?
breaking down
Oh.
The standard of care 1 violations and standard 2 and standard 30 at least. I think those were the 3. So in many cases, you'll get, standard 1 is the respect and equality and et cetera. And sometimes it might be very different from another case. So you'll have one person who was treated rudely by staff, and it might be, something less significant than if they were DOS'd unfairly. So that's another category is if you were not treated right in a significant way versus spoken to rudely or I'm not remembering the others.
Can I just offer really quickly for the, again, my double espresso is not fully kicked in yet. If you turn to, for purposes of information, especially if you're in the gallery, if you turn to the last page of the memorandum that's in your packet, it'll sort of add context to what we're talking about. So if you look at the last page of the memorandum, you'll see the total client complaints for fiscal year 2025 and 2026. If you look at the bottom, you'll see that the standards are itemized as to which standards are alleged to have been violated. That's what we're talking about. I see a lot of head nods. That makes me happy. That makes me happy. So if you look at those standards, that's what we're talking about now. Do those kinds of standards, like you can see they read, treat all clients equally, provide shelter services in an environment that is safe, cleaning, janitorial, property storage. Do those standards need to be more specific? Are they too broad? That's what we're discussing. Okay. All right. So is there, Marion, do you have,
I do have it. I can upload it as
Okay.
well. Just, I'll do it in a second. Sorry. I can go over the draft. So the draft to standard of care 1, treat shelter clients equally with respect and dignity, including the application of shelter policies and grievance process. We've drafted some subcategories of A, being able to break it down as rudeness, B, property, C, what we're calling like as unfair DOS, and D, if their internal complaints were ignored. So like those are some of the categories in which we receive complaints. And the idea is if we break it down in subcategories, it'd just be more granular, like we were discussing. And the second section that we've drafted is SOC 2. Provide shelter services in an environment that is safe and free of physical violence by ensuring the safety protocols are in place that include training to shelter staff regarding de-escalation techniques. And A, other guests pose a danger. B, staff threat, and C, facility itself is dangerous. So those are the categories of which we get that complaints in that particular area. Often, obviously, the SOC doesn't file complaints against other clients, but usually it's surrounding staff not responding to threats from clients against clients. And so that's the type of complaints that we tend to get. So breaking that down as well. And I believe, am I missing any? I saw some that you're still working on the all staff training as breaking it down more.
Yeah, well, that one already is broken down really.
Right. Mhm.
Within it, I think I just corresponding A to number 1, B to number
Okay.
2, et cetera, on standard of care 30, which is training.
Yeah.
And so in the November SOC report, which I didn't complete, the matrix shows the breakdown, which would have been nice to display right now because that was completed. It's somewhat subjective, so maybe one thing we can talk about is, let's say it's two, they were treated both rudely and unfairly DOS'd.
Mhm.
Once we look at some, we can maybe decide how to do this starting in January
Mhm.
so that we get good data. So
Yes.
what I was doing was which one seemed to be the most egregious. So if I was spoken to rudely as I was unfairly DOS'd, I think the DOS is more important.
Mhm.
And that was just my judgment on.
Yes. Yes. And also recognizing that they often flow into one another. So having lived in a shelter for a year, a lot of times, if there's an escalation because somebody was treated poorly, and then they respond, and then that response is the grounds for the DOS, they often flow into one another. And that's partly where the data itself needs to get more granular. And I know that that's something we'll be discussing when we get to the why of the emergency equity report. Because operationally, it's one thing to have a vision for equity. It's difficult to operationalize it. How do you do that and measure what the inequitable outcomes are? That's different from like a policy macro directive. That's why we're going to be discussing the report. So it'll pop up in there as well. Yeah. Is there, if there is no one else, I want to make sure that I make room to members of the virtual world and or the gallery that may have public comment on the granularity in the standards of care. Is there anyone on the committee that feels led? None in virtual
I do
world?
have one virtual comment.
Okay.
So with your permission, I'm going to unmute Francis. So Francis, if you want to introduce yourself or whatever you like to tell the committee, go for it.
My name is Francis, and I'd like to say thank you to the committee for taking the time to listen to my comments. I am actually one of your the people who you're working for. I live in a shelter right now, and this is very interesting that you're coming to this point because I've been having some issues in the shelter, and they pretty much kind of center around these standards of care. I didn't want to make a comment on your last minutes because I didn't feel adept enough to comment on it. So I don't know if this flows into the woman who is making a statement about care of standards number 2. So equity. If you're talking about equity, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I am in the Safe at Home program. I am fleeing from domestic violence. Here at the shelter I'm at, I'm having a problem because number one, they're asking me for things that would endanger myself. So if we're talking about equity, I don't find at this shelter any kind of policy, procedure, or connection to individuals who understand that publicizing someone's information or putting their information in a place where it can be researched could actually be dangerous to them, right? So I'm having like a problem with people asking me to sign like release of information forms, right? And I'm fleeing. I'm having a problem with people like like I did end up giving them my ID and my social security number. So like I had a big deal about, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be honest. The people who work at this shelter seem to be about one step above all the people in this shelter. I'm sorry. Okay. Let's just be honest. A lot of people here are one step. They could be in this shelter next week. So I felt actually unsafe giving my personal information when I'm fleeing, my social security number, my ID, to someone there. I don't know where you store this information. What is your standard of care for people who are fleeing? Is this in a case somewhere where no one except one person can get to it? Are you going to put this somewhere like let's say Secretary of State? Every time I go get a new ID, my people who are trying to find me, they find me. Are you posting it somewhere where someone could access it through a DHS site? These are the types of things that I ask the people here. They don't care. They look at me as if I am a problem, and all I do is record their conversations and speak to an attorney, because this is not an appropriate standard of care for someone who is fleeing. I was in a shelter in LA. I had to literally drop everything I had and run. So this standard of care is inappropriate. Not only you're talking about things like being disrespected by staff. I have that constantly. Of course, I record everything that they do. They are disrespectful. They are intimidating. Again, the men here who are staff, care coordinator staff, they are recovering addicts. I don't even know if they're in recovery. I've seen people walking around here with vape pens,
30
and
seconds.
marijuana pens. I'm sorry, I'm out of time. I'm sorry.
No,
The point
you
is
got
that,
30 seconds.
oh, okay. The point is that the staff is not exactly someone who you would look at and feel comfortable giving your personal identifying information to. Okay. I'm already in a, what do you call that? Identity theft issues. I have a police liaison. What kind of standard of care in an equity situation would be appropriate for someone like that? Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just want to acknowledge that, and most especially having been involved in domestic violence and the courage to find the resource in the space where you are not in that kind of dynamic. So I applaud you and for sharing something that's so personal about where you are, and I know can be scary. And I hope that you are aware that part of our work and what we'll be talking about later is there is a grievance policy. Anytime there is a violation of the standards of care that it's alleged, there is a way to file a grievance, either by using an online system that we have, or we actually have office hours. If you're not comfortable filing online, there's also a way to actually talk to staff about grievances that you have.
I
Because
filed several grievances, sir, both with
yes,
your committee and with the staff here. So I've done the process of actually writing. I think I've done
yes.
3 or 4 at this point.
Okay. Well, I encourage you to continue meeting with staff and we'll continue to work on those grievances. And I'm grateful for what you shared about the standards of care. It's important that there's granularity as to data collection and making sure that people feel safe when they're sharing private information. Are there additional comments, either from the public comment, that is from the gallery in person or online, regarding Section 2, Item A, more granularity in the standards of care? And I want to welcome Member Street. Hi. Seeing no additional comments, Robert, we have no virtual, is that right?
Correct.
Nope. Let us then proceed to the new business and reports. The policy subcommittee report being item A. There was a quorum at the September policy subcommittee meeting, and Chair Street.
And that's a typo. I meant to put there was a quorum at the December subcommittee meeting.
December, yes. The September meeting, well seasoned. Yes. And are there discussion, is this section where, are there additional inputs about the? I don't remember. Okay.
Members Dobbs and Creech were there, and we did discuss working, basically looked over the item on granularity, I think was the main thing we were discussing.
Okay.
You know, we talked about that, didn't we?
We did.
About the breakdown in the standard 1 and standard 2, et cetera. But I don't think there were any major
Okay.
decisions or
Okay.
requests to be put to the full committee.
There's no action items.
No.
Okay.
No action items.
That being said, if there's no additional, there are no action items that we're moving forward this meeting from the policy subcommittee meeting. Does that mean that we can, since there's no action items, is there any grounds for public comment or?
Yeah, I don't think so. There were very few people present.
Okay. Okay. That being said, can we move to section 3, item B, which is entitled Emergency Equity Report? Yes. As discussed at the November and December policy subcommittee meetings, circumstances call for us to consider issuing an emergency report covering equity in the shelter system. The committee will initiate work to provide guidance for members tasked to draft and more specifically to finalize this. Just a little bit of context, and I mean a little bit of context. Those who may not be aware, the mayor, which I'm grateful for, we always need to see how we can be acting, be more efficient at getting outcomes. There's currently an effort underway to streamline various committees in the city system overall. And there's been some preliminary reports that have been issued. And there's various committees that are recommended to be dissolved. The Shelter Monitoring Committee is one of those committees. Now, that being said, that would likely not happen until June or July, and there's various motivations as to why. It's not my role, I think, or our role for it to inspect people's souls to find out why. My role is, however, as long as we have our enabling legislation to do our work, and our work, as we've been talking about, is specifically to focus on how standards of care may be, even unintentionally, leading to racially disparate outcomes, which is different than equity in the broader system, like where people are sleeping, how people are engaging security, what happens with denial of service. Are there racially disparate operational level things that are occurring that are possibly skewing outcomes in some way? Because of the timing and because we only meet every quarter, that report, a motion needs to be put forward to issue that report, to get all the information that we need and to be able to issue the report by March. Because we would need to send that over to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors to make sure it's entered into the public record and to be able to go before the board to say something about racial equity in the standards of care before whatever happens in June or July happens. We need to have enough runway. That being said, I do have language for a motion that I can put forward, but also want to open up room to discuss racial equity. And this committee does have the authority on enabling legislation to issue emergency reports. And to be clear, once we issue that report, any department that is named in that report will have 30 days to respond to the report. Okay, so that's what the report is for, to sort of surface racial equity standards of care items that may not be necessarily embedded in current racial equity policy guidance. Okay, so are there any comments or thoughts about that? About either our committee's direction heading into next year, what it means in terms of the streamlined committee, but more specifically, issuing a report about standards of care.
If I may, Chair, I'll just mention,
Yes.
Staff Marion and I have been thinking about this for a while.
Yes.
Because we have our internal department team that has done some training, and so we realize this is important. And so we have gathered some statistics that might be of some help, which I was planning to share with Member Street and all of y'all. But the things like some of the demographics, I think I've mentioned this before, of people who call in, and one way we could see if there's disparities or inequities would be to see, okay, certain demographics are less likely to have us complete the process for them, for example. So that might be a sign that, we need to, do something to change the way we operate, maybe to do more, reach out 3 times instead of twice to try to get people to respond when we have something we're missing before we can go forward with a complaint. And so that we now have enough to compile that. I have it. I mean, we have it on a spreadsheet, and we just haven't done the number crunching to see if there's anything interesting in there. But that's one thing. And then the department itself, I believe the HOC reports do have some data on equity, which might might be helpful as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I was just hoping for more information about what other kinds of like data you're looking for and looking at and like what kind of those metrics are.
Yes. Would anyone like to share? I have, so for example, rather than macro level policy is where people are, I mean, when you get to the baseline of operations, is how people are being forwarded to interactions with security, is how denial of service might be escalated, is the way that grievances are filed, responded to, the timeliness of grievances, is the accessibility of hygiene products, laundry. At the granular operational level, is there a difference between, even if unintended, are there differences that have racially disparate outcomes, even if unintended? So it's matching with what the actual standards of care are. You have to provide hygiene products, you have to provide a place to sleep, but are those operations being distributed in a way that have racial inequities embedded in them? And so therefore might be tied to certain outcomes, rather than we intend to treat everyone the same, but what is actually happening at the operations level.
So I guess, yeah, I guess, is there going to be some sort of comparison then between the like more positive outcomes and like the things that are not a grievance and then the things that are sort of the negative outcome? And can we look at those two groups of things?
Yes, I will be very fascinated as to when we put out the request for information, because one of the challenges is the lack of specificity in the data. So something that we're aligned fully with the city with the Office of Racial Equity, with HSH, is we recognize that if you get bad data in, bad data out. So part of the recommendations of the report might be, oh, it turns out we don't even measure this thing, is what we might surface. It's not necessarily for directives, but it's more, here's what you might track, because it's something where you have a blind spot and it might be leading to outcomes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love putting a blind spot.
The bodies that continue to move forward, we kind of want to put a stamp or a mark on what we have contributed along the time that we have been here. So we want to say, hey, this is what we tried to do. This is what we wanted to do. This is what we were able to do. And this is the data and the information that we compile from X, Y, and Z agencies to make sure that moving forward, you guys did have some type of outline or guide to what we did here and how we would have moved forward if we continued.
I did have a question, if I may, Chair. Is the objective here to find the disproportional impact that the SOCs have on our shelter guests, and then determine as to if it's if there's equity afforded to the race, gender, religious folks? Okay.
And I understand this, just to set the baseline, as exploratory, because previous equity plans that the city has published in 2021, we recently updated Home by the Bay last month, I believe. And again, we've been working with the Office of Racial Equity. I've met with Anthony, also with the prior chair of HLC, about equity specifically. Those reports are generally tied to outcomes, but they are not granular operations, and they're not necessarily trackable. Like, even if something happens, did you intend racial equity? Very subjective, right? Did this person get escalated to security faster than this person?
Mhm.
That's measurable.
Yeah.
And right now, we don't really have a lot of those data points. So we're kind of, I think, setting, as Member Street said, a baseline for what they might use in the future. Because, just to be clear, phase 1 of the racial equity plan was published in 2021 by the city. We haven't yet published phase two. So phase two is supposed to be more external focusing, not internal staff training and all. So we're going to find out. It's exploratory is kind of how I understand it. Are there additional, please feel free if led, members of the committee?
When is the subcommittee meeting?
The second Wednesday of every month at 3.
And the intention is, in the motion that we put forward, the subcommittee, once this committee approves that report, the subcommittee would be empowered to draft it, finalize it, and members that are interested, that want to actively participate would attend the monthly subcommittee meeting as that draft surfaces. Okay, but this motion here is because this needs to be moved forward with the approval of this body to allow for the persons that would be able to do so as members of this body. That being said, it looks like I see pens moving and papers moving, but not a lot of, so I think it's safe to move to public comment. Is there public comment either in our virtual gallery or our in-person gallery specific to the emergency equity? And I wonder, before I do that, should I read the proposed motion?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
That way,
okay.
people can comment on it and
Okay.
suggest things and
All right, okay.
take that into account when people vote.
Okay, get out your hot cocoa. It's a little bit long. Because it has to be specific. It has to be specific. I'll read it slowly. I move that the Shelter Monitoring Committee authorizes the drafting of an emergency report examining whether the standards of care currently in effect within San Francisco's shelter system may be producing unintentional racial inequities in lived conditions, including, but not limited to, safety, sanitation, accessibility, staffing responsiveness, discipline, and grievance handling. This motion authorizes the committee member introducing this motion to gather all necessary information within the scope of the committee's statutory authority to draft a complete report and to circulate a proposed final draft to the policy subcommittee. The policy subcommittee is authorized to review, suggest revisions, and finalize the report no later than its March 2026 meeting. Upon finalization by the policy subcommittee, the report shall be deemed an official product of the Shelter Monitoring Committee, entered into the committee's records, and submitted to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. And this authorization is granted pursuant to the Shelter Monitoring Committee's enabling legislation and does not require further committee action to proceed with the information gathering, drafting, or finalization. Like I said, it's long, because you have to cover all those bases so that it can't be said later, you needed further authorization to do X, Y, Z. So just said, plainly said, we authorize gathering of all necessary information where if we're led to approve that motion, the policy subcommittee would then be the body that drafts the document and finalizes it. And any members that are led to participate, I actively encourage you, you can attend the policy subcommittee that will be hereby authorized to be the body that compiles that report.
And members of the public, y'all can come too.
What's that?
The members of the public could come too.
Yes, very much so. We strongly encourage it.
What was the date? You put March 20 something? I think the
The
third Wednesday is
March-
the 18th.
Before the March 2026
Oh,
meeting, which would be, the March 2026 meeting is March the 18th.
okay.
So it would need to be really before March the 18th.
So it'll probably be prior in
February.
the Wednesday before that in the subcommittee.
Right, so then that would be the 11th.
Correct.
March the 11th? Yes.
Is there a focus on which SOC you're focusing on?
Not necessarily, but 1 and 2, I think we want to hit primarily and then kind of go down the list. I think we're gonna throw in some shelter manual things in there as well that we might feel needs to be updated or, improved, since I've asked for it a couple times already.
Is this from a procedural, is the data collected from the shelter monitoring complaints? Is that where we're acquiring most of them?
There's the coffee's kicked in now. The way that the enabling legislation is currently set up, once we issue, once the policy subcommittee issues the finalized report and sends it over to any department, there's two parts. We'll be authorized to ask departments for data, public health, HSH, various departments. Once we issue them, the second step is once we actually issue the finalized report, pursuant to the current enabling legislation, any department named in the report, in the final report, will have to respond to the report no later than 30 days after it's issued. So there's really a data collecting layer, and then there's the actual responding to the findings of that data.
Makes sense. Yeah, because I can just see the SOC A1 shelters treat all shelter guests equally. Just the word equally is not equitable. Because equally, if you're a Spanish speaker, Chinese speaker, Tagalog speaker, we could treat you equally, but we may not offer you language line. So while we treat people the same, we wouldn't be treating them equitably.
It's a huge one. When we go into shelters all the time, when you mention the TTY system, people look at you like you lapsed into Swahili.
Right.
They literally don't know what you're talking about. So sometimes, not all, but sometimes. And to your point about equity, one of my elders said to me, which is a great way of understanding it. It's not so theoretical, and y'all know I love theoretical, but it's not so theoretical. If we have $1 to distribute among 10 people, equity does not mean that everybody gets 10 cents. Equity means that somebody might get 25 cents and somebody who had more gets less. Equity does not mean equal distribution. That's not what it means. So to your point, if we conflate equity with everyone gets treated the same, that's not equity by definition. Yeah, it's not. It's a great example. You see how everybody just went, huh? So that's, in a way that's not theoretical. Equity does not mean I get the same thing as you. That's not what it means, which is why equity is difficult, because some groups will feel, well, I didn't get as much as you. Equity means you weren't supposed to. Great example.
Chair, is the objective? Oh, sorry, there's an echo. Oh, what's going on here? Robert. I think that's equity right there, guys.
Is there an AI committee member? That's crazy.
There you go.
Yes,
That should do it.
excellent.
Staff.
I love a house music committee meeting. That's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Yes.
Would the objective be to incorporate the amended SOC language to be aligned with the appendixes for the shelter providers? Because on the one hand, you have the shelter, the SOCs on one side, and then you have the appendixes on the other side. And so it would be important to bridge them together so that they echo and correspond and provide support one another, because sometimes from an operational standpoint, you're bound to the terms of the appendix, not an outside document. So if they could, get them together, that would be most beneficial. And if you want to make an impact. that would be it.
Well said, well
That's
said.
a great
Yes.
suggestion.
And that can be included in the report. That's a great
Yeah.
line item too.
Yeah, I'll be there on Wednesday. Don't worry.
Well informed, well informed. Are there additional committee comments specifically about the emergency racial equity report before we take public comment? And then I can, if it's helpful, read it again before we move to have, if anyone is led to make a motion on the report.
How would we get the information?
Good question. The proposed motion would effectively empower myself and also the chair of the policy subcommittee meeting to reach out to relevant departments to do the data gathering that's necessary. That's part of the motion itself. And then that would surface in the policy subcommittee, getting all that data together and then compiling it into the report. Good question. I hear stoic silence. So does that mean that we can move to public comment either virtually or in the gallery regarding the emergency racial equity report? After which I can read it again before any motion is made.
So anyone joining by phone can press *3 if they wish to comment on the emergency equity report. And those in the gallery do have first dibs if you want to come up to the podium.
Oh,
All right, nobody so far.
I believe you have the gallery.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm curious what the emergency,
We can hear you pretty good.
yeah, what is it?
This report?
Like you said you was gonna read it again?
Yes, I will.
All right.
The actual motion itself.
Yeah, I wrote down, grievance, sanitation, and staff response.
Yes, and I'll read it again. I'll make sure to read it again. It's basically covering, going to look at all the standards. But in the actual motion, it includes some of them, but not all of them. But it's basically looking at like all the standards of how people are treated, all the standards of care, where they sleep, access to products, training, staff, all the standards of care. The language of the motion itself includes a few examples, but not all of them.
So I stay in the shelter and I was just, I was wondering like where I could get a document of that and also a document of, the standards of care.
Yes, good question. Do we, can we interface with him
Yeah.
to get him a
Let me
copy?
give-
All
I'll
right,
give you-
okay. And, thank you. Basically, so I don't know if they're complaints, but I did have like concerns. I just kind of feel like, you know what I'm saying, as far as the grievance is concerned, like if you have concerns with like if there's like a way that the grievances are being addressed, you know what I'm saying? I don't think that a grievance is, I think if there's already like a gap between the client and the staff, the grievance it won't do anything. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, there's no point in that, especially if there's like racial disparity there. You know what I'm saying? And sanitation is very poor in the shelters. I stayed in 2 shelters. I'm staying in one right now. And it's like you have showers there, but it's like they have mold in them. And you shut the shelter down for, 2-3 hours a day. And we got to leave and you say you're doing a deep clean, but we come back in and it's still mold in there. And like, it's just disgusting. I'm not showering in there. I go shower other places. It's filthy. You know what I'm saying? They don't clean. And staff response, no, I'm not getting any response at all, and that's why I came here today because like my perspective, and don't take this the wrong way, but I'm not attacking you. You know what I'm saying? But basically, like, I do not like I don't empathize with people that help the homeless, because I feel like in some type of way you're getting something from it. You're either being paid. I don't go to Glide. I go to Glide, but I can't stand going there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like where's the money for all this stuff at? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I just feel it's a lot missing. I haven't seen the standards of care. You know what I'm saying? The standards of care, I don't know what they are, but you know, like, what is the training for these people that's being hired? What's the hiring process? Because they don't have any emotional intelligence, emotional intimacy. I got called dirty, filthy, and you know what I'm saying, by a supervisor in the staff not even 2 weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? And I still ain't, I'm not getting any nothing's being done, And I kind of just feel like all of this is being swept under the rug. I hope this is not the last time I come here,
Yes.
but thank you though.
Yes, thank you.
you.
And part of what you shared is very real, and that's why we exist as a committee. Nobody here is getting paid to participate in this committee. We're all giving our time for free. And one of the reasons the emergency report is necessary is, like you said, at the actual lived experience level, we might intend for racial equity. But if it means that people that look like you and I are disproportionately being affected because of the way that cleaning is happening, staff training is happening, that means we don't have racial equity. Absolutely. But in order to measure that, we got to first find out where it actually is. And that's what I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do today. And I would encourage you to come to future meetings of the committee. And once you know the standards of care, just know that is the contract of people that are employed and working there. And most are well-intended, but that is what they are agreeing to provide you. And so if they're not doing that, there's various mechanisms by which we hold people accountable, because that's what they're agreeing to do. That's why you're there. That's why they're there to support you. So I appreciate you being here. I lived in a shelter for a year, so I understand what you've seen, and I appreciate you being here.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Robert, I'm looking at our Shelter Monitoring Committee website. We don't have the SOCs published on that link. Is there a possibility to put a link there to it so that?
They're in there. Maybe let's make a note to make them more prominent.
Maybe on the landing page.
They're not on the landing page. They're
Maybe
down-
if we can like add them to if there's any way to do that.
Just
Yeah,
a
there
link or
should be.
something, right? Because
they're down under like about, maybe you have to go into the bottom and click about.
Okay.
there it is. It's under the about.
Okay.
But
It's hard to read.
Maybe there's a way to surface it, like to put it
Yeah.
more
at the
like,
top of the.
You just put it center to care.
and then also, I don't know how other providers do present the SOCs to intakes, but I would assume that most providers demonstrate the rules, the SOC rules to the inbound guests that are coming in for the night, and then the shelter rules in addition to that, and have them, review them, because that is something that should be standard. Yeah,
Posted, right?
they're posted.
Yeah.
But often more than not, shelter guests can acquire the SOCs just by, requesting their case managers to produce it for them.
Yeah.
It's no secret,
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, just in terms of like information availability and accessibility, for the standards of care, it would be best to have the widest variety of like ways to look at it and see it, because when people are intaked into these systems, they do insane amounts of paperwork.
Yeah.
Nobody is reading them. It's not accessible information in that form of like,
Yeah.
I signed 50 things so I can stay in a bed.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's part of like
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
something.
We've had many conversations about printing flyers more than you could care to
Yeah.
hear. Yes, and so there are constraints about the system. where you put flyers, how you put them up, what color they are, what language they're in, where they're posted. That's part of our work inspecting. It's much more logistically complicated than I would have ever imagined before joining the committee, but I appreciate that. Like, how do we surface them? People know.
One teleconference person. And Charles, Charles, I'm going to unmute you now. You can introduce yourself if you like and let us know what your thoughts are.
Well, I think it's necessary, the documents, but also the standards of care is San Francisco administrative code. So if he wants the documents, he can go to the public library like today, or he can go to the San Francisco Law Library. Now, the other thing is the shelter training manual, that's online as well. It's probably like 180 pages, but it's online. Now, the other part is, so you have the standards of care, and then you have another administrative code that is for the navigation centers. So you have two parts of it, and they're different parts of the San Francisco administrative code. And thank you.
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that clarity. Are there additional virtual and/or in-person?
Refreshing and no more.
Okay,
Can make a motion.
shall I reread the,
Yes,
okay.
please.
And as was said earlier, this is meant to just be representative of some of the standards of care. We're not going to list like all 15 of them in the motion. Okay. A motion for an emergency racial equity report. I move that the Shelter Monitoring Committee authorize the drafting of an emergency report examining whether the standards of care currently in effect within San Francisco's shelter system may be producing unintentional racial inequities in lived conditions, including but not limited to safety, sanitation, accessibility, staffing, responsiveness, discipline, and grievance handling. This motion authorizes the committee member introducing this motion to gather all necessary information within the scope of the committee's statutory authority to draft a complete report and to circulate a proposed final draft to the policy subcommittee. The policy subcommittee is, I'm out of time. The policy subcommittee is authorized to review, suggest revisions, and finalize the report no later than its March 2026 meeting, which we established would be on March the 11th of 2026. Upon finalization by the policy subcommittee, the report shall be deemed an official product of the Shelter Monitoring Committee, entered into the committee's records, and submitted to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. This authorization is granted pursuant to the Shelter Monitoring Committee's enabling legislation and does not require further committee action to proceed with information gathering, drafting, or finalization. Is there a motion?
Motion?
Second.
You were the one with the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm gonna do a little quick bio break. This coffee's kicking in.
No
Okay.
problem.
All right. So let me assume that those who made the motion are in favor and ask Member Botkin, yay or nay? Member Wausau? Member Street?
Yay.
Member Langford?
Yay.
For Chair Elo?
Yay.
Member Dobbs?
Yeah.
And Member Tasby?
Yay.
Right, well, that looks.
Did we skip member Creech? Has there been an activity I didn't know about?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, okay.
You want to vote, you want to make clear that you're in favor.
Double down, okay.
Sorry. I will not be ignored.
Okay, so the issuance of the report and the minute as spoken aloud has been approved. And let's please make sure, for the sake of record keeping, I will email you a copy of the language so that it is inserted in the minutes of this meeting in that exact form,
Okay,
just to avoid any clerical confusion.
all right.
Got it.
That being said, shall we proceed to item C of section 3, which is a report from the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing by HSH Manager Bracco. Welcome, welcome. And for those who are in the gallery, HSH will be, he'll be referencing the table that has the white and blue lines.
Great. I'll get started. Good morning. Luz Bracco. I'm the manager of shelters at HSH. I am recovering from a cold, so my voice is a little raspy today, so forgive me for that. I might also have a coughing fit mid presentation, but I'll try and keep this short and just get through this. So I'm going to do my typical run through of the occupancy and capacity system-wide for our shelter system. I pulled this data as of yesterday. It's current. So just talking a bit high level first, just to give you a sense of the occupancy rate overall. System-wide, we have a 90% occupancy rate. That's across adult, family, TAY, shelters. Again, I always say this, but our target occupancy rate is 90%. So we're right on track system-wide. Within our adult shelter system, we have a overall occupancy rate of 93%, so slightly higher, which is great. Just looking at the chart quickly, we have it broken down site by site within the adult system. I won't go through each one, but you can see that most of the adult programs, all of our emergency shelters, for the most part, are above 90%, again, which is our target level, many significantly above 90%. There are a few programs that I'll just highlight as being slightly lower than 90%. Dolores Shelter Program, we talked about this last time. They actually recently went through an expansion of that program and added 50 new beds at that shelter. This is a shelter in the Mission, run by Mission Action. The majority of those 50 new beds are actually for their Jazzy's Place program, which is a program that serves LGBTQ plus folks, which is very exciting to have additional resources for that population. So they are still filling those beds slowly as they're ramping up. So we're hoping that those beds are filled in the near future. But that kind of accounts for the slightly lower occupancy there. The other program that I'll highlight is Hope House Recovery Focused Shelter. And we talked a little bit about this one. This is a brand new program specifically that is tailored for folks who want to live in a recovery focused environment, folks who are sober. This is really a new model within our shelter system. So we're really trying to gauge exactly what population is going to be interested in this program. Salvation Army is the provider there, and they have been taking a mix of referrals from street outreach, so folks who are unsheltered and expressing a desire to live in a sober living program. We're also taking referrals, transfers, so folks from other shelter programs who are sober and interested in kind of a dedicated sober environment. And then Salvation Army is also taking referrals from some of the other kind of treatment-focused programs within the larger system. So it's kind of a mix of referral sources for that program. But again, they are ramping up. We're hoping that they're at full occupancy in the near future. Just going on to navigation centers, not really much to highlight here. For the most part, all above 90%. Our non-congregate shelters, Adante and Monarch, also above 90%. I'm going to circle back after I'm done going through the occupancy. I have a few program-specific updates that I'll give, including some of these programs. Just moving on to the TAY programs. So as you know, we have 2 TAY shelter programs as well as some TAY transitional housing programs. System-wide for the TAY programs, they're at a 91% occupancy rate. The 2 TAY shelters are above that 91%, so well utilized. I know we've talked many times about dedicated TAY shelter capacity and just the ongoing need for that. Okay, and then finally, just finishing off here with the family shelter sites. These are slightly lower in terms of overall occupancy. The family system is at a 71% occupancy rate. I know we've talked about this many times. It has been lower for many months now, and we're trying to kind of really do some right sizing to figure out how to improve that occupancy rate over time. Just to really flag which programs are slightly low on the occupancy rate side for the family system. We've talked about this before, the Downtown High School Family Stayover Program. This is kind of a unique family shelter program sited at a elementary school. It uses the gym at that site, and it's for families who have children who are enrolled in SFUSD schools. It is only overnight, which makes it slightly less attractive of a program. It's also congregate, so people are sleeping in one large space. Hamilton Family Emergency Center. This is also a congregate shelter program. So folks sleeping in kind of one open room. I think what we've really noticed in the family system is families expressing a desire for single room shelters as opposed to congregate shelters. So that has really been kind of one pain point in the family system that we're trying to really figure out how to make congregate living more attractive. We're right now doing kind of a big push to call every family on the family wait list to really advertise that there are open beds in the congregate setting. If you're willing to take that, you can have that opportunity right now. So we're hoping that helps fill those beds pretty quickly. Okay, so that is the family system. I did just want to circle back and give a few program-specific updates within our system. We do have 2 upcoming program closures that I want to talk about. It's actually the 2 non-congregate shelter sites. So the Adante and Monarch are, as you will probably know, were originally SIP hotels during COVID. We transitioned those to non-congregate shelter programs, which have been operating for several years now. Unfortunately, we have to return those buildings back to the building owners, and ultimately they'll be returned to kind of their original use as tourist hotels. So both of these programs will close at the end of February 2026. That will be essentially the last, I think it's February 27th is the exact date for the last day that clients can be on site for both of those programs. So HSH right now, we're doing a large demobilization effort where we are coordinating with the on-site providers to really offer housing and shelter to every client in those programs and make sure that all of the clients there have a safe landing as we're closing these programs. And I'm sure I'll report more about that in future meetings as we're getting closer to the closure date. And then one other update that I wanted to give, I'm sure folks have heard a lot about this, but the mayor's office has had a really big push right now around substance use services as well as kind of behavioral health services. So there's really an emphasis on partnerships with the Department of Public Health and really integrating public health services within the shelter system. So we actually have two new pretty interesting pilot programs that are cited at two of our existing shelter programs. So one of them is at the Central Waterfront Navigation Center. And this is going to be an expansion of the Restore program, which we may have talked about here before. So at the Adante, which, as I said, is closing, we have been piloting this Restore program, which is a partnership with DPH around engaging folks with severe substance use and really encouraging them to come inside, take a shelter bed, while DPH staff really engages folks in treatment, getting folks on bupe and methadone, and really helping folks to take the next step to potentially enter a more long-term treatment program. So we're expanding that program at Restore. DPH staff will be embedded at that navigation center to provide additional services for that specific population. So that's one pilot. The other new DPH pilot is at the Goff Cabins program. So this program is a little different. We're calling it an enhanced care pilot, which essentially means the folks at that site will be slightly more high acuity than at other shelter programs. So we're really targeting folks who have had multiple engagements with emergency services in the past, folks who have had noted kind of behavioral health crises in the past, in some cases, folks who have not done well at other shelter programs and have had histories of DOS, things like that. Really focusing, bringing those folks together at this site and embedding the site with really enhanced DPH services. So there will be additional behavioral health staff from DPH, additional medical staff from DPH to really wrap around these clients and ensure that they're successful in shelter and really stabilize in this program. So we're really excited to have a shelter program that is kind of dedicated to that more challenging population now. I'm going to leave it there. Any questions?
Yes. You did well with the cold. You did well.
Thank you.
Did well. I have some questions, but I will wait for members of the committee first. But please.
So I do have a couple questions. So how many people are on the family shelter waiting list right now?
That's a good question. I could check on our website. Last I checked, I think it was close to around 300.
Okay. And then so with some of these numbers, I just have a quick question. So if there are 300 people, then how come some of these are like really like I feel like 85% is high, but to me it's low because I feel like there's still families out on the street and so are some of these beds reserved for particular people, or are they not? Why are they at 100 instead of just like 85?
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. So yeah, there's more people on the wait list and there's vacant beds in the family system. There's a number of reasons why there continues to be vacancies. So the family system, unlike the adult system, all of the referrals go through our coordinated entry system. So every family trying to access a family shelter bed has to go to an access point, get assessed, get on the wait list. There is a process where, whenever rooms turn over, they have to be cleaned and put online in our system by the provider. So sometimes there's vacancies because room repairs are needed, cleaning is needed. There is some amount of turnover time for rooms.
Yeah.
So that is one piece of it. The other piece of it is the part around once a family reaches the top of the wait list, there's a process where the access point connects with the family, has to call them, matches the family to an available unit, offers the unit. There's a period of time where the family can call back, either accept the unit. In some cases, the family declines the unit, hoping to get a different unit. So that process of kind of matchmaking can sometimes take time and leave vacant units open until that connection is made. So that's something that we've been working a lot with our coordinated entry team to kind of clean up that process, make it more efficient, make sure that folks get connected to beds quicker, but it remains kind of an issue.
So with the, sorry, one final thing. So with that matchmaking process, so only the provider is the only one that places them, so you guys don't look at that also?
So the coordinated entry, the access points match make. So they're the ones that match the client to the vacant unit. And then, so it's the access point.
Okay. Because sorry.
No, go ahead.
So my only issue is that it's not really an issue, but concern is that sometimes I feel like are they letting people know that there are these units available? And because I do know a few families that say that when they do reach out to some of these providers, they're not they're being turned away and they're saying that there's nothing available. But I mean, I don't know.
It's the tricky thing about using the coordinated entry system is that you have to go through the coordinated entry system and you have to go through the wait list and essentially wait your turn to get to the top of the list. So in most cases, families can't go directly to a shelter site to get a family shelter bed. They have to go through the access point and wait to be called when they get to the top of the list, which, there are pros and cons to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that, on the family shelter thing. And I'm just concerned and I'm wondering, are you guys looking at how much resources are being wasted on beds that people don't want and are consistently turned down? And like, why are we continuing to offer this type of shelter that is not suitable for families and is keeping families out of shelter and on the street longer?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely looked at, if you're talking about the congregate programs. Yeah, so I mean, we've definitely looked at that challenge. This particular, Hamilton Families has had this congregate portion to their program for many years.
I just wanted to put my personal experience on the record is that I did get referred to Hamilton Family Services for me and my children when I was living on the street, and they did deny me anything. They basically said I don't make enough money to get rental vouchers. This was in the past, so I'm sure they were full at that time. But like, this is just, I just want to know like how much resources are we spending on this kind of service for families that is just not suitable, you know? So like, just a note.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm sorry, I have one quick question for you too, Ms. Bracco. I wondered if the department looked at the correlation between, because I worked in the access point at one point. And so I wonder if there's been a thorough examination with respect to the high turnover in the access points, because right now it's a tremendous turnover in the access points right now. And so I wonder if they're looking at that correlation with that turnover in relation to that wait list as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't oversee the access points, so I don't have too much insight into that. So I can't really speak to that, but I'm certainly happy to talk a little more with my coordinated entry colleagues to really understand that.
I have three specific points. First, as regards coordinated entry. I mean, we know that I think that the median wait time is still 11 days before getting to the top of the list. And I do think the design of coordinated entry needs to be thoroughly revamped. It is its own like really traumatizing experience to wait for a phone call, maybe. And if you miss that phone call, you get kicked off the list. So right now, according to our own data reports, of every 10 people that want shelter, 8 of them fall off the list without getting into a shelter. 8. So we have a fail rate of 80%. I'm not a math whiz, but that ain't good. So I appreciate very much so that we're trying to move people through, and this represents how many people land. And I kind of think in my brain, well, this report, it kind of signals the really highly motivated people who did all the things, responded to all the things, showed up at the thing, were sort of more able to do all those things. But 80% of people, at least from step 0 to step 1, we lose. No idea where you went. You don't have a phone. You don't have an email. It's hard to find you, all of that. When I got into a shelter, it was like heart palpitations, thinking that you missed the phone call, because if you don't respond in 3 days, you get kicked off the list. So I know that we're working on coordinated entry, and that's not really our purview because we have to work with the state, and it's a larger system. We all recognize that it's not new information, but I did just want to surface that. Secondly, we'll be very excited as to enhanced care, because we've talked about that here, from the gallery to members of really to the SOC, the equity report itself. That should be like a little test case. What happens when staff are trained better? When you have more clinicians on site, you have more cultural competency, those DOS numbers should be like near 0. They should be almost none. Because if you have all these clinicians that are getting paid clinician money, and now you have all the support you need, and you know that it's a high intense population, you know what the training tells you to do. You should be losing very few of those people. So I will be very interested in the data that comes out of that program, because if we're seeing anywhere near the number of DOSs that happen at other sites, something is very wrong, either with the training or with the model itself. So I think enhanced care is an interesting little litmus test as to whether more training for a specifically high acuity population, how does that specifically impact outcomes and depress denial of service? We should be hearing fewer grievances from people. There should be an overall measure, demonstrable measure, that it's a more stabilized population, because that's why the staff inputs are there operationally. I will be very interested in those programs. Lastly, something that struck me just a couple weeks ago is because, like many other members here in their work, I go with people who are in high crisis and need, they might need a psychiatric shelter, a specific site. It's not enhanced care, it's like a specific psychiatric site, which may require medication. I didn't realize until a few weeks ago, that there are some psychiatric hybrid drop-ins that also have overnight shelter beds that lapse into like referrals, where you can get a referral into a psychiatric facility and they have an overnight wing or portion, and there's a drop-in portion. And if you don't have a referral, you have to leave. But if you get a referral, you can stay overnight. I did not know that. So I wonder in what literally until a few weeks ago. So I wonder like, and I realize there's systemic and structural reasons why it may be reported the way that it's reported. It will be helpful to me as a visual person to have like a better forest view, 30,000 foot view perspective. If there's there's probably conversations happening now. How can we better see the full view of like the full system, including places where some of those high acuity people that are now being in enhanced care, but they'll probably also have engagement with that other side, like with the psychiatric drop-in side. Is there any way, or has there was probably a discussion about how can we represent that there is this kind of overnight shelter component that's happening, which I think is, to be fair to HSH, that we're doing the work for the high acuity population, but that's not really represented here. So your thoughts about that, like how we can maybe represent that that part is happening, even if it is kind of its own separate, specific programmatic area?
Yeah, it's a good question. Most of those programs are managed and funded by DPH. So HSH doesn't have like complete insight or purview over them. I mean, there's some of them that I'm definitely aware of, and with these new DPH partnerships that are specific to shelter programs, I know DPH is definitely getting referrals, like you're saying, from some of these programs. Like I think it's 822 Gary Street, which is their new stabilization program, which is going to be an important kind of funnel into our enhanced care program at Goff. Yeah, it would be interesting to kind of see a full map of these other DPH programs. I have not seen anything like that. Would definitely be curious to get my hands on that myself.
Yeah. And the only reason I ask is because in public media, the way they've been marketed is drop-in centers. So to the average person, if you hear a drop-in center is a drop-in center. I don't know the difference between departments or non-departments, especially if I'm in crisis. Drop-in means drop-in. So it's kind of conflated a bit, like in the media, the way officials are actually describing these drop-in centers kind of blurs the line between what is one department versus the next, to my view. But I recognize why, because it's under a different mandate, but it would be helpful just to know we are taking care of this other element. And now that the partnership exists, maybe there's a way we might visually represent, even if it's a totally different mandate, but we can represent, oh, but this is actually happening in the system. So it's a more holistic view. Yeah.
Another question. So for the non-congregate shelters at the 2 hotels, I'm counting 154 people that you need to relocate. And I'm just wondering, do you know how far into that process you are and like where they are going? And like how many of them are still left before? You said February?
Right, the end of February. So we have just kicked off the process. So for Monarch, we've paused any new intakes into the program, which is typical when we're closing a program. We'll shut off new intakes, and through that process, naturally, there's kind of a process of attrition. We're already mapping out what housing is available. I know there's some senior housing that's coming available that's going to be offered to some of the folks. We're also working with our rapid rehousing counterparts at HSH to potentially be able to offer some rapid rehousing for this population. I will say it's a very short timeline for the closure, unfortunately, which means for a lot of folks, another shelter placement is likely going to be what's offered in that period of time. It does, obviously, as we all know, take time to move through the housing process. So for a lot of folks, it might mean that they're not going to get their housing offer in time or be able to move in time. So there might be an interim step of moving to another shelter placement.
And is there any concern that people are are not going to have even a shelter bed offered to them in terms of like numbers?
No, everyone will definitely be offered a shelter bed. We'll definitely make sure of that. And just to say, separately with the Adante program, the majority of the Adante units are actually set aside for the Restore program. The Restore program actually has a shorter length of stay. It's meant to be kind of a short-term intervention just to engage folks and then really help them move on to treatment. So for the most part, folks in that program have a 7-day length of stay with the potential for extensions. So folks in that program turn over very quickly anyways. So folks should be moving out pretty quickly for the Adante.
Awesome.
Can I ask Louis about the winter shelters? We're doing okay there?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that. Yeah, we opened the Interfaith Winter Shelter at the end of November. We are in very good shape there. They were at, last I checked, full occupancy. 30 out of 30 beds were filled. And I think folks know about this program, the Interfaith Winter Shelter. It's kind of a collaboration between the Interfaith Council, ECS is the site operator, and what the Interfaith Council does is they partner with a number of host church sites. So the program is hosted at, I think it's about 4 different church sites. For the most part, they're all in Cathedral Hill, and it kind of rotates from site to site. Each site is a little different. Each site has a different capacity, but clients have really loved this program because one of the things that Interfaith does is they partner with the church and different congregations to provide the food at the shelter programs. And it's usually these incredibly home-cooked meals that clients really, really appreciate.
Well, I really have appreciated it too. When someone comes to the door and doesn't have a shelter, having that extra option during the winter has been really, really great.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm inspired that my church is one of the participants. It took us a while to get there, but now the Quaker Meeting House at 9th Street near 9th and Market is one of the Interfaith Winter providers. And I heard so many stories from people as they were queuing, when I would go in as they were setting up operations, talking with staff. It's such an encouraging program. And I know there's been discussion about extending the time frame during the year because it has been so well received. And because of the drop in nature, you don't need a reservation. You just show up. There is no waiting for a call. You just show up. And so I think that model offers something that really complements the coordinated entry system.
I did have questions. Can you hear me? Great. Louis, I did have a question about the family emergency shelters. And I know that on the adult shelter sites, we have a goal of exceeding 90%, right? Is that 90% also required for the family shelters?
It's our system-wide target is 90%. So even for the family sites, we're aiming for 90%.
Right.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that the family emergency shelters are referred through the coordinated entry system versus the SF-HOT, right?
Correct.
I did see that the SF-HOT is meeting and exceeding their 90% from majority of the programs, not considering the new programs that are being launched. And kudos to Jazzy's Place, by the way. I'm curious to see when you compare the SF-HOT referrals versus the coordinate entry referrals, and just systematically just looking at the data from last month by examining November's and February's, the numbers are still for the family shelter system under 90%. I'm curious to see if there could be a pivot as to the type of referrals, like if we know that SF HUD successfully reaching the 90% and exceeding that number, I guess the question would be, why wouldn't we want to adopt the same approach for families that are in need of emergency shelters? That's one. Two, if it's a drop-in center, and I think of this drop-in center, just like our chair mentioned, is just walk up like the Interfaith Council. I think of it more of like the inclement weather, like as, you know, we have 10 beds and we have 10 people lined up. Let's get them in and let's get them fed. Let's get them out the next morning and then do a report as to what's open, right? Because I think about the 300 people on the wait list, the turnaround time. I don't know if the data for 8 out of 10 people are not getting services, but it's I have a soft spot because that's where I started. I started at the SF Unified School District for the those unhoused, and we had a program that's called the FIT program, the Family and Youth in Transition program, and it's through the McKinney-Vento Federal Act, and there is a liaison at the school site. I mean, at the school district level that could partner up, and you know, there is a list there of students that are unhoused that could probably help bridge this 38% capacity. I wanted to know what your thoughts on that, and I respect the fact that it's maybe not be in your department, but these are when you look at the numbers, I'm curious to see what January is going to look like.
Yeah, these are really good and valid points you're making. I will say 2 things are coming to mind. So for the stayover program, that program, interestingly, for the family system is one of the more unique programs that they do take walk-ups directly. So even with the self-referral option for that site, I think it's also a new program. So the site location, I should say, is new. This is the one that it was formerly at Buena Vista Horace Mann School.
Yeah.
And that program had to shut down because the school was undergoing renovation. So we moved to this new site. So part of this might also be about location. Maybe folks aren't fully aware of the new location. There might be a number of reasons for the low occupancy, but it is walk up. So folks it's very similar to Interfaith. Folks can walk up to the site and get a bed there if they need it, but that still seems to not fully resolve the occupancy issue there. For Hamilton Family, which is the other congregate site, we have been having some talks around the possibility of walk-ups to that one as another way to potentially resolve the low occupancy issue. That's kind of still a discussion that's actively being had. But I definitely appreciate kind of the thoughts around just how to problem solve around this issue.
Yeah, I just want to point out that there is a gap there between there's walk up at the downtown thing, but that's for children who are already enrolled in school. So parents of young families cannot access that. So I definitely think that Hamilton should definitely look into that. That would be great.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis.
Yeah,
Thank you.
unless it's a public comment.
Thank you.
Oh, it
Thank
is a
you.
public comment. I think.
Now, and recognizing where we are in terms of time, we now have the staff report, which is item B, to review inspections, complaints, and investigations, member recruitment and hiring. And SMC, our committee is set to make a presentation at the Homeless Oversight Commission at their April meeting. And we might also, since we just adopted the motion, that presentation would also include the final racial equity report. So we don't have to request a separate meeting. So that being said, what we are going to be working through is the the memorandum which you received for this meeting.
Yeah, there are two of them. One we may you want to go through the most recent one first, which is the October report. So it's dated November 24th. And both of these memoranda have some details. We try to make sure to redact names or any other confidential information, but to provide enough detail for you to get a feel for the sort of complaints that we're handling. In October, there were, again, the most complaints were in standard number 1. And on the next time we do this, and I'll try to put it on our website before our next meeting. I will do that. I commit to that. You'll be able to see a breakdown with those more detailed types of violations of standards 1, 2, 3, 30. If you go to page 6 of this report, it shows the total complaints by shelter. And I noticed there was a mistake there. It says Division Circle had 2 and there was a total of 9. If you look on the column for October 2025, there were actually 1 for Division Circle and a total of 8 for 2025. Sanctuary had 4 in 1 month. Couple sites responded. Well, no sites responded late this month. Sorry, that was in the past. There were some red print there indicates late responses. We're trying to use that to stimulate shelters to not be late in their response. The details, if anyone has a question about the details, we can cover that in the comments a little bit as time allows. I'll note that there are another mistake here. There are 2 unfilled seats. Seats 4 says seat 2. So seat 4 is vacant and seat 12, those are the vacant seats. We're trying to get the Department of Public Health to submit some names to us. They've been slow to do that, but it's always good to have someone there. Angie David was our member in seat 12 up till a month or so ago, and she was just so busy she didn't want to commit to staying active. The HOC, actually, my boss, I think they want us to make a report in February. So we'll have possibly 2 different opportunities to talk to them early next year. We'll see if that's confirmed, but HOC's membership has changed and we shall see if they put us on their agenda. And if they do, say we'll be there with you to make sure they aren't too cruel and unusual.
Oh, you don't got to worry about me.
Yeah.
Fully educated and capable. Don't you worry about me.
They'll be the ones to tremble in their boots when you get there.
Representing the committee as a whole, because, again, it's important to me that the work we've been doing as regards to SOC for years, even before I joined the committee, that is preserved, because that goes to the lived experience of participants. That's why we're here doing the work, and we all here to get the work done. I do want to just real briefly, before we move to public comment, recognizing the time for general public comment, I'm just led to read through, if you look at the memorandum, and I know can be lengthy. So if you look at the memorandum from the committee staff with the date of November the 24th, 2025, which is the October 2025 staff report, I think it's revelatory because it kind of talks about what we're all kind of in different ways pinpointing: standards of care, the experience of people who it's not really registering all this staff stuff, but that's not what it feels like. what we aim to get out in terms of the racial equity report, because if you just read through all of the italicized after the allegation, you'll see there's one bullet point, and underneath the bullet point, there's an italicized version. The italic version is the version that we get back from the provider after the investigation, right? So what you'll see if you read through it, there's seems to be a through line that's somewhat similar that I think is telling about why we need this kind of report. If you just read through them, starting on page 1, the shelter responded that they took appropriate action. Move to the next one on the next page. The site manager explained staff must ensure that clients are not bringing excessive belongings into the facility. Move to the next response. The shelter always takes action if they witness misbehavior or the client admits rules were violated. Move to the next one. The shelter explained that the complainant is mistaken. Move to the next one. The employee denied the allegation. Surprise. Move to the next one. The shelter pointed out, I love this one. The shelter pointed out that the complainant could have gone around the guest who was sitting on the floor. However, staff could have done a better job of de-escalating the situation. Move to the next one. The shelter denies receiving any grievances. Move on to the next one. The shelter assured the shelter monitoring committee and the complainant that staff have completed required training on harm reduction, trauma-informed care, and professional boundaries. Do you hear a theme here? Move on to the next one. In response to this complainant, management verified that regular cleanliness and property control measures are in place. Notice the theme. So across all of the complainants, it's not accidental. It's not anyone imagining it. There is obviously a reported culture in place of defending, denying, mitigating, and ignoring when grievances are raised. And when there's an escalation because people feel like they're not being heard, and then they get a little bit side-eyed at you and staff aren't trained, you've now sown the seeds that leads to the escalation that you now say, now we have the right to deny service. Yes. But all of that stuff of saying, no, well, we're trained. No, it's not, you're not, no, you can't have all of that leads to that. So I just want to note, there's a through line here. And this is part of what I'm hoping we're going to surface in this equity report, because these are all independent of one another. Nobody's in a group chat responding. And how is it possible that it all sounds so similar? Very HR, very managerial, right? So I think that's part of like what we're really articulating. The responses to the grievances themselves tell you something about how the training is actually being implemented. Tells you something. It's instructive. So that being said, and I see the hand in the gallery, we are now, unless there is a comment from the committee, yes, please.
In response to what you were saying, I really feel like this is a chance that rather than the standards of care just being something that the shelters can be like, well, we have our policy, we have this, we should really be thinking about how these standards of care are empowering the people that are living there to have some sort of control and input. Like, these people have no control over the situation while they're in the shelters. So it's like, these need to be really empowering and explicit to like make it so it can't just be hand waved away. So I agree.
Yes. Additional
Yes.
committee?
Robert, I wanted to just make a data correction on the page 6 of this memo. On that graph that you have here, the Excel sheet, under MSC South, you have 327 beds. As of January 2025, there was a bed reduction of to 299 for MSC South. So they don't have 327 beds. Just to give you some
So
Good catch. Good catch.
that's the caffeine talking. Yeah. Um,
Okay, so we'll make the corrected, like in the updated reports, we'll update the numbers. Appreciative of all of the work to compile this data. It's a lot of work, and I'm so grateful for Robert, and Marion for the work. It's a lot of work. That being said, if there is specific to this staff report, so specific to the memorandum, if there is either virtual and or in-person public comment, please feel welcome before we move to the final section, which is general public comment. So these public comments are specific to these reports. And then after this, we'll move into general public comment for anything that's not specifically listed in the agenda. Okay? Yes.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing. So I got here October 21st. And basically what I noticed is it's just way too easy to lose your shelter bed. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's too many what you call it? It's just too many ways for you to lose your shelter bed. And then another thing, hidden resources. You know, I didn't know about Adante House. I found out about it through word of mouth. And a lot of the things that I find out about, like the homeless system, is through word of mouth. And what I'm finding out is, you know, a lot of things, like for me to get housing, or like for me to get housing, it's like I had to been to prison, I got to be a senior, I got to be on drugs, you know what I'm saying? Behavioral health, you know what I'm saying? And like, I don't really fit. And even if I do fit any of those categories, I'm not high on the list for it. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm a student in school right now, and I graduate next semester, you know what I'm saying? And it's like no resources for me to be able to get any type of help, you know what I'm saying? Even though I'm trying. So it's like I'm being pushed to the side and kicked to the curb. And it's like, you got categories of different people that are homeless. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know which category I fit in, but I'm one of the ones that's like not really, like I'm homeless, but I'm like not really like, I haven't been to prison for extended amount of time. You know what I'm saying? I'm not on drugs. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I gotta lie and say I'm on fentanyl just to get housing. You know what I'm saying? And that denial of service, you know what I'm saying? It's just way too easy to lose a shelter bed. And I think that comes back to the grievance. You know what I'm saying? Like that grievance thing is just, it's out. And so I feel like a lot of people really don't file grievance. I think honestly, what I'm gonna end up doing today is, from today on, I'm gonna write a grievance every day. No matter what it's on, I'm gonna find something to write about, because I feel like, you know what I'm saying, like some type of way I gotta be heard. You know what I'm saying? I have to, because I'm not being heard. I'm not being seen. You know what I'm saying? Like I've been trying to look for the resources. I keep getting turned around, turned down, lies to run around. You know what I'm saying? Like I was trying to get into Adante House, but they telling me I got to be on drugs, and you know, I can't study being in this room with all these people. They making noise. You know what I'm saying? I got online classes, you know, and I got to deal with that. I'm trying to pass my classes so I can get out this situation and move to the next. I appreciate y'all hearing me.
We appreciate.
Appreciate you.
That's real.
Appreciate you.
Yes, yes. And much respect for that graduation.
Yes, you got
Yes.
that.
Yes,
That drive.
much respect for that. There are many gaps that we have to fix, because we don't want people who are trying to feel penalized. That's a significant adverse effect, like this racial inequity thing, where you trying so much to create specific pods, you end up, in effect, penalizing people who are either more high functioning or so. Much appreciated, much appreciated. Unintended consequences, not intentional, but unintended consequences. Are there additional comments from the gallery or from our virtual friends before we move into the headliner, which is general public comment?
anyone attending by phone, you can press *3 if you want to raise your hand.
No, seeing none? Okay, then let us move on. We can give it 5 minutes if anyone feels led. I know we're supposed to be closing now at 12, but I don't want to condense or collapse or ignore a general public comment for which is specifically for anything that's not explicitly itemized on the agenda, and that includes members of the committee. So if anyone has a comment that's not related to anything that was on the actual committee, but is pertaining to the work of the Shelter Monitoring Committee,
And there is somebody online.
please feel free. Yes.
Francis, I'm going to unmute you. Please make your comment.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make a quick comment. Unfortunately, right now I have cancer, and some days I am well enough to actually interact, but most days I'm not. I was about to be put on hospice and decided that I was not ready to die, and my only option was a shelter because I've been sick for many years. I'm also fleeing from domestic violence. So the point that I was making earlier was not a complaint, because I've gone through your complaint process several times. The point that I was making before was something that I'd like this committee to consider to add to their quality of care process for people who are fleeing. You can be a victim or a survivor of domestic violence, but you may not be fleeing. And so because the city doesn't have enough beds for domestic survivors who need a shelter, they go to a regular shelter, and none of the things that are really needed are there. Everything that I needed as a domestic survivor shelter, I had to go to a domestic survivor shelter to get. Like when I wanted to go to Safe at Home, I had to find one of those in San Francisco. There are a few other programs, but the point that I'm making is that I had to go other places. And I feel like the quality of care for someone in that position, it's dangerous because maybe you can't even walk the streets. Have you thought of that? That getting on a bus would be dangerous? Somebody might see you and be like, oh, there she is, and tell the person who's looking for you. There has these need to be inside of the shelters. And so my comment is to please consider adding these processes to a shelter. Maybe one person can handle a person who is fleeing domestic violence. And so you offer them these safety measures. Number one, you offer them the ability to use an alias. You have their real name and their real documents, but they can use an alias inside of there. You offer them opportunities to shelter themselves from being where they are. Every time I got an ID, they could tell where I was. Every time I applied for food stamps, they could tell where I was. So do you understand that if you put their names in certain places, you put them in danger? The point that I'm making is, what about these documents? They say that you get a safe here, but there were many times I was in a room with somebody without a safe. That's one of the complaints that I made to the Shelter Monitoring Committee. Somebody steals your ID or even sees your ID, takes pictures of it. It puts you in danger. The people who take your ID downstairs, I'm sorry, I don't trust them. I have eyes. I have language. I interact with these people. I just don't. Maybe a place where someone can put a central location, someone can put all of their safety IDs, their identifying information there, so that they feel this level of safety. I don't think you understand. If you're fleeing, you're terrified.
Yeah.
You're shaking. You're scared. To be in that situation and to be sick, that's me. I had to fight for a room for myself, a special accommodation. I was fighting. I couldn't even recover, and my brain was leaking. Okay, so the point that I'm making is, if these kinds of situations can be considered, and maybe these types of policies be considered, just to, I know you can't accommodate them totally because it's not a domestic violence shelter, but you could add some processes, some policies to protect these people because they're in danger. I'm in danger. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Best.
Thank you for that, Francis. Thank you for that. Is there additional public comment? And if not, then I will ask if there's a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I can motion for that. Before that, I'd like to wish the committee a happy holidays and happy new year. It's been a privilege to sit here before you folks, so thank you very much. Motion for adjournment?
Second.
Aye.
All right.
A.
That was a good meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very quick.
Yes. It's a really good meeting. That was great.
Oh, meeting's over.